At 3:12 in the morning, the emergency call came through. A trembling voice, barely audible, whispered into the line. "Please, he's in the house. I think he—" And then, nothing. Silence. Dispatch operators sat frozen, replaying the line, hoping for more, for anything that might follow. Every second stretched, every heartbeat echoed in the quiet room. Minutes later, police arrived at the address, sirens still wailing, lights cutting through the darkness. The front door was unlocked, curtains drawn. The house was silent, too silent. Inside they found her, the woman whose voice had screamed for help, cold, motionless, already gone. Medical examiners later confirmed she had been dead for nearly 2 hours before the call was placed. A voice that should not have existed, words that should not have been spoken, a call for help from someone who could no longer call. Investigators stared at the recording, at the logs, at the clocks. Every piece of evidence pointed to one impossible truth. The woman had died long before she made that call. And yet, there it was, her voice, her fear, her pleading, captured on record. No forced entry, no signs of struggle, nothing in the house explained how it could have happened. The contradictions stacked on top of each other, impossible to ignore. Who had picked up the phone? Who had spoken those words? And why would someone use the voice of a woman already gone to call for help? Every technician, every officer, every investigator who listened to the recording described the same sensation: the impossible, the inexplicable, something that shouldn't exist, yet undeniably did. The call lasted less than 10 seconds, but those 10 seconds would haunt everyone involved. It raised questions no one could answer, questions about time, life, death, and something or someone inside that house that no one could yet explain. If she had already been dead, then who was calling for help? No forced entry, no broken locks, no signs of struggle. Every piece of furniture in place, curtains drawn, lights off. The house was silent, untouched, as if nothing had ever happened. Her phone lay neatly beside her hand, screen dark, battery still active. The emergency call, 3:12 a.m., was logged in the system, verified, live, real. Every dispatcher confirmed it, every log confirmed it. Investigators would soon realize this wasn't just a murder, it was a timeline that shouldn't exist. Minutes recorded in the system, hours reconstructed by forensics. Nothing lined up, nothing made sense. Every fact pointed to an impossible truth. And yet, there it was, a voice pleading for help from someone who was already gone. To understand what happened at 3:12 a.m., we have to go back 48 hours. Her name was Lena Hart, 32 years old, accountant, quiet, meticulous, and careful in every aspect of her life. Known among friends and colleagues as responsible, cautious, and routine-driven, she rarely deviated from the life she had built for herself. For years, her days followed a rhythm almost mechanical in its predictability. Morning coffee at 6:30, walk to the train station at 7, work at the downtown accounting firm by 8, evenings spent reading or speaking with her sister at exactly 8 o'clock. Weekends were equally structured, groceries on Saturdays, laundry on Sundays, phone calls with friends and family meticulously scheduled. But in the weeks leading up to her death, small changes began to surface. Colleagues noticed she seemed distracted, her focus slipping on tasks she had once performed flawlessly. Friends described her as restless, cautious in ways that seemed new, almost paranoid. Personal life layers revealed more. She had entered a new relationship shortly before her death, one that seemed intense, consuming her attention, but also adding stress. Neighbors reported occasional arguments late at night, voices raised behind closed doors. Family members mentioned a heated discussion with her brother, unusual for someone normally composed. Even her professional life changed abruptly. She quit her job without explanation. She deleted her social media accounts entirely, erasing months of posts, interactions, and photos, leaving friends and acquaintances puzzled. Hidden conflicts appeared in subtle ways. A coworker recalled Lena whispering quietly to them one afternoon, "If anything happens to me, check my phone." At the time, it seemed like nervous banter. Now, investigators would see it as something far more meaningful. Neighbors reported she had recently installed new locks on doors that never needed them before. Small, deliberate changes, as if she were preparing for something, protecting herself in ways she hadn't needed before. Friends described her behavior as unusual, almost cautious to the point of fear. She double-checked doors, paused. Someone who had observed, studied, and manipulated the digital and physical spaces around her with extreme precision. Evidence began to accumulate. Footprints were discovered outside a side window, impressions pressed lightly into the soil. Not haphazard, not accidental, deliberate, carefully spaced. They suggested someone had been approaching the house, pausing, then retreating silently. Neighbors reported seeing a car driving slowly past Lena's street on multiple nights. The same model, the same dark tint. No interaction, no lights flashing, no horn, just observation. The vehicle moved deliberately, inching past her home as though measuring, recording, noting. Investigators checked registration. The car belonged to someone Lena knew, someone trusted, a friend, a neighbor, someone from her immediate circle. The impossibility of it all began to crystallize. The phone number, the footprints, the vehicle, a presence within her world that shouldn't exist, yet undeniably did. Investigators reviewed surveillance again. Night after night, Lena's comings and goings recorded in meticulous detail. The subtle changes in her routine, the late-night glances through the curtains, the moments she paused before answering the door. Every small action she had taken, every precaution, every instinct she acted upon in those final weeks now became a warning embedded in her life, a code left for anyone watching. And then came the chilling realization. The person behind the calls, the shadows outside, the car driving slowly past, was not a stranger. But the car didn't belong to a stranger. At that moment, the case became not only about the impossible timeline of a call from the dead. It became a hunt for someone inside Lena's life, someone who had quietly manipulated the environment around her, someone who had observed every decision, every precaution, every whisper she made about checking her phone. Investigators knew the danger was closer than anyone could have imagined. Every new piece of evidence tightened the circle. Every anomaly, every impossible fact pointed toward the terrifying conclusion that Lena had been watched, stalked, and ultimately trapped by someone who knew her life as intimately as she did herself. Investigators traced the slow-moving car observed outside Lena's house. The registration returned a name familiar to them, her boyfriend. He claimed he had been checking on her, worried because she hadn't returned calls, concerned about her well-being. But the timeline he provided didn't add up. His movements, the times he said he had been elsewhere, contradicted witness reports and surveillance footage. He knew her schedule in exacting detail, not just her routine, but the subtle patterns, the time she left for work, when she would pause to check the mail, when she would make her nightly phone call to her sister. Behavioral analysts noted his demeanor during questioning: calm, even unusually calm, over-cooperative. He volunteered details that nobody had asked for, sometimes correcting the investigators before they even realized a discrepancy existed. Every answer, every gesture suggested someone accustomed to controlling information, someone practiced in manipulation. Yet the evidence was not definitive.
He was in her life, he knew her habits, but did that make him guilty or merely observant? Investigators had to keep digging. Then, a breakthrough came in the form of her phone. Text messages recovered from her deleted accounts revealed a heated argument hours before her death. Words exchanged in anger, frustration, and fear. Threats implied, suspicions raised, and a tension palpable even in the brief exchanges recorded on the tiny screen. Every new piece of evidence seemed to tighten the focus on her partner. The car, the timing, the knowledge of her routines, the argument hours before her death, all pointed toward him. Police thought they had their suspect until the autopsy results came back. The autopsy, conducted by experienced medical examiners, would soon reveal details that contradicted every assumption investigators had made. Patterns of injury, timing of death, and subtle forensic clues began to challenge the simplest explanation, that the person closest to Lena was responsible. At that moment, the case transformed once again, from an impossible call from the dead to a stalking presence, to someone intimately close to her, and yet even this revelation would only deepen the mystery. Investigators realized that to solve the puzzle, they would need to reconcile the timeline of the calls, the movements of the car, the behavioral evidence, and the medical facts. Every layer of the investigation hinted at a truth that was both unnerving and elusive. And as the autopsy report circulated through the department, detectives understood one critical fact. The person they suspected most may not have been the one responsible for the events that unfolded at 3:12 a.m. Forensic analysis brought a chilling revelation. Lena Hart's time of death was estimated at approximately 1 p.m., yet the emergency call that had confounded dispatchers and investigators was logged at 3:12 a.m., more than 2 hours later. The timeline was impossible. No living person could have made that call. No ordinary scenario could explain it. Physical evidence inside the house deepened the mystery. There were no fingerprints but Lena's, no signs of struggle, no forced entry.
Digital forensics had been combing through Lena Hart's phone for hours, examining every file, every log, every trace of activity. What they discovered would redefine the case entirely. The phone's voice assistant had been activated automatically. Analysis revealed a trigger phrase embedded in a recorded audio file, a phrase Lena had recorded weeks earlier. Inside the phone's storage, investigators found a hidden audio file, one that had never been played, never been sent, and never been noticed. It contained a recording of Lena's voice, her words calm but urgent. "Please help. He's in the house." It was identical to the call received at 3:12 a.m., yet Lena had recorded it long before. Forensic timelines revealed the shocking truth. Lena had anticipated her own death. She had discovered she was being poisoned, subtle at first, then rapidly worsening. She had known that someone close to her intended to end her life, and she had devised a plan. She programmed her phone to place an emergency call after her death, a call containing her own voice, recorded earlier, replayed automatically to emergency services. The impossible call, the one that terrified dispatchers and confounded investigators, was not paranormal, it was human ingenuity. She had staged her own distress call to alert the authorities, to expose her killer, to ensure her death would not go unnoticed, uninvestigated, unexplained. Every detail now made sense. The timing of the call, the precise phrasing, the recordings hidden deep within the phone's system. Lena had orchestrated a warning from beyond her own life. But her plan didn't end there, because Lena's ingenuity extended further than anyone had realized. The staged call was only the first layer of a final revelation she had left behind, a final piece of evidence that would not only identify her killer, but ensure they could never escape justice.
Investigators working tirelessly through Lena Hart's personal devices discovered a hidden folder deep within her encrypted files. It had been placed there deliberately, protected with passwords and buried beneath layers of digital detritus, as if she had known only those who looked carefully enough would find it. Inside, forensic specialists uncovered a meticulous daily log. Lena had recorded every subtle symptom she experienced: headaches that began in the morning, fatigue that came in waves, nausea that sometimes made her pause mid-step, moments of disorientation she noted with painstaking precision. Each entry had a timestamp, noting the progression of her condition. Alongside these personal medical notes was a list of names: coworkers, friends, relatives, her partner, everyone in her immediate world. But one name stood out. It was circled repeatedly over and over, in careful, almost obsessive handwriting. Small annotations appeared next to it: suspicious behavior, unexplained access, financial discrepancies. Every mark revealed her growing awareness of danger, her suspicion focused, deliberate, and strategic. As investigators pieced the timeline together, the chilling truth emerged. The killer was not her boyfriend, not the stranger whose car had lurked outside, not the relative who had seemed poised to benefit from her death. All of them had been red herrings, distractions from the truth she had foreseen. The perpetrator was someone she interacted with daily, a coworker, someone who knew her routines, her habits, and the small ways she moved through her life. The motive became clear as the investigation delved into her professional life. Lena had uncovered an identity theft scheme, a subtle, carefully orchestrated plan to siphon her personal information, her finances, her digital identity. And when she realized what was happening, her coworker began a slow, calculated campaign to silence her. The poisoning had been methodical, tiny doses administered over days, enough to weaken, to confuse, to make her appear ill, but not enough to leave immediate suspicion. Lena, however, was intelligent and observant. She documented every symptom, every deviation from normal health, every anomaly she noticed, knowing that each would become critical evidence if the worst happened. And then there was the call at 3:12 a.m., which had terrified dispatchers and confounded investigators for weeks. At first, it seemed impossible, a voice calling for help after death. But forensic analysis revealed Lena's ingenuity. She had programmed her phone to replay a recording she had made weeks earlier, herself saying the words, "Please help, he's in the house." She had anticipated the investigation, she had foreseen the attempts to cover up her death, and she had left a digital breadcrumb trail so precise that it would lead investigators directly to the perpetrator. Every timestamp, every log, every hidden file pointed to the coworker. Lena's final act was not only a warning, it was evidence. She had staged her own distress call to ensure her death could not be dismissed as accident, as illness, or as untraceable manipulation. She engineered a message from beyond her own life, revealing the crime to those who would piece it together with care. The meticulousness of her plan was staggering. Every precaution, every hidden note, every digital record and symptom log was designed to survive her death, to point investigators to the one person who had sought to harm her. Her foresight transformed the investigation from a puzzle of suspects and red herrings into a definitive trail leading to the coworker who had thought they could act with impunity.